What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show, and in this video I'm going to tell you how I actually got through 7 years in prison. And not only that, I'm going to talk to you about prison routine as well. When a person is locked up having to serve any amount of time, especially a lengthy prison sentence like I had to, that person better figure out real quick some sort of routine that they can get themselves in that's going to help them get through that time. Because if they don't, there's no way in hell they're going to be able to handle having to serve any sort of a prison sentence. In fact, not having a routine while locked up and basically just going through each passing day aimlessly, thinking about the free world, thinking about things that are completely beyond your control at that point, are only going to cause you to fall into the worst and darkest times imaginable, most certainly feeling depressed and even possibly suicidal. And I'll be honest with you, at the very beginning of my prison sentence, literally my very first entire year that I was locked up, I was dealing with all of those things. Dark times, depression, thoughts of suicide. I had no idea how I was going to get through that time, or even more importantly, if I even would. But the crazy thing about it is that when locked up, you're basically given two options. You're either going to sink or you're going to swim. And by swim, I mean you are going to find a way to get through whatever it is that you are facing. And think about this even more broader than actually being locked up. I mean, this can really relate to like anything in life. You're either going to sink or you're going to swim. You're going to find a way to get through whatever it is that you're dealing with. And I have to assure you that being in prison, those are your only two options. When I finally started to find the strength in myself to literally start facing this time that I would have to serve, was actually able to stop thinking about the outside world and things that were beyond my control, I began to realize that I was going to need to get myself into some sort of a routine, something that I could do on a daily basis, help my mind to focus on something else, and actually make this time that I had to serve a lot more manageable. In fact, for anyone who has ever been locked up or is currently locked up, this is exactly what they've had to do as well. But the very first thing that comes into play when actually trying to create some sort of routine for yourself is the fact that your routine is going to have to completely revolve around the routine and schedule of whatever prison or facility you're locked up in. Counts, lockdowns, free periods, those are the type of things you have to take into consideration when trying to get a routine for yourself that's going to help you get through your prison sentence. So as I'm telling you about my personal prison routine, what actually helped me get through the 7 years that I just served, I'm also going to be telling you how that had to revolve around one of these specific prisons that I was at and the routine of that facility. And I'm going to use the very last prison that I was at as an example, just to kind of show you what goes on a daily basis inside of a prison. The very first thing in relation to all of this is without a doubt the counts at a prison. And basically what these counts are all about is, first, the prison is locked down. This happens multiple times a day as well. But the prison is locked down, and then COs go into each of the housing units, they count each individual prisoner, and then they take those numbers, call them into like the main watch office, where all of those numbers are added up to equal however many prisoners are at that prison at that specific time. And if all of those counts added up don't come up to equal however many prisoners are supposed to be in a prison, well, that only means one of two things. Either somebody escaped, or the more likely reason, and this happens quite a bit, one of these prison guards somewhere along the way must have not done so hot in elementary school when they were learning how to count, and they messed the count up. And again, these counts happen like multiple times a day. 3 a.m., 6 a.m., 11 a.m., 6 p.m., 9 p.m., and midnight. And again, every time one of these counts is taking place, the prison is on lockdown. These counts aren't supposed to take but maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes at the most. But I've seen times when these counts are so messed up and they can't figure out how exactly they've messed these counts up, that these lockdown for count times have actually lasted like hours. Now, if during that time it had actually been a prisoner who had escaped, well, he would have had at least a 1 or 2 hour head start before they finally realized, we're not messing the count up. Somebody has escaped. But yeah, these counts, they're probably like the most important thing to the routine and schedule of any prison anywhere. And in this last prison that I was at, that I'm telling you the routine for, during some of these counts, we would actually have to be standing up, dressed in our full prison attire. All of the counts that took place from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m., we had to be standing up for those counts. For the other counts, most prisoners would be asleep, so they would just count those prisoners in their bunks. But there is an important reason why some prisons do make you stand up for these counts, and that is to make sure you are still alive. In fact, I had heard this story one time about a guy who hadn't stood up for count for like half of the day. And the COs just kept counting him in his bunk, telling him, hey man, you need to get up. But this guy wouldn't respond at all. And what ended up happening was the prison guards were actually bringing this guy a charge for not standing up during count. And when they went to serve him this charge, which would have ultimately resulted in like a loss of canteen or visitation or rec time or maybe some sort of fine, they found out that this guy was actually dead in his bunk. So here they are serving this guy with a charge for not standing up during count. Nobody had checked on this guy for like half the day, and turns out this guy like died in his sleep. It's pretty damn crazy to think about. So in relation to my own personal routine, it would basically go as follows. I would actually wake up every single day sometime between like 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. and actually that's when my day would begin. And the reason that I would get up so early is because during that time there weren't a lot of other prisoners awake. And you have to imagine that when all of the other prisoners are awake, it's a madhouse in there. With all sorts of noise and chaos going on around you pretty much 24/7, you're not going to be able to think, focus, or really do anything other than to partake in all of that chaos and madness. So I found that by getting up really early, like around 4 or 5 in the morning, I could actually get my cup of coffee, sit at my bunk area, and really start to plan out my day. And every single day I would also make notes for myself, a little like agenda of what I wanted to get done for that day. And I know that sounds crazy to think about, like, why the hell would you need some sort of an agenda? You're locked up. What could you really be doing in there? But to be honest with you, I had a lot of stuff that I was doing. Not only did I have a job where I had to go around painting pictures all over the prison, but I was also doing a lot of artwork for myself, drawing cartoons, drawing tattoos for other guys. There may have been a show that was coming on TV that day that I wanted to watch. Every single day in prison, you can rest assured that prisoners have a schedule of exactly what they will be watching. Top TV shows watched by prisoners. That's actually probably a pretty good idea for a video as well. My workout had to be fit into that schedule. My time that I would go out to rec, where I would either play basketball or soccer, my two favorite sports to play while locked up. Maybe there were some books I was reading where I was trying to get to a certain chapter, maybe some magazine articles or some writing I was trying to get done, letters to pen pals, and all of the crazy chicks I had writing to me during this time. There was a lot of stuff that would go into my daily agenda. And every day that I would make this agenda, I would always make sure that I was putting way more on that agenda than I could actually get done for that day. And the reason I did this was because I learned that having so much stuff to try to get done on a daily basis while locked up, and also not being able to get all of that stuff done, but trying to, my time was actually flying because of that. In fact, I stayed so busy in prison that I didn't have a lot of time to think about how much time I still had left, how much time I had actually been locked up for. I became so accustomed to trying to do so much stuff every single day that I didn't have time to think about much else at all. And every prisoner has their own type of routine. Some will actually spend all of their time laying in their bunk watching TV. I'm talking about like years on end, not getting out of that bunk other than to go to chow or to possibly use the bathroom, rarely ever taking a shower. Some will spend most of their time reading, studying, trying to learn things, possibly even going to school, doing any kind of correspondence courses that they can. There are actually college courses prisoners can take that get mailed to them, and then they send back the schoolwork that they've done for those courses. I've seen guys actually get degrees like this. Some of these actually entail prisoners having to spend a good amount of money to get involved with these college courses, but some are able to do that. Other guys spend their entire prison sentence on the rec yard working out. And if you ever wonder how prisoners can get so big while locked up? Think about this. At some prisons, you're pretty much allowed to be on the rec yard from sun up till sundown. And in those type of situations, there are certain prisoners who spend from sun up till sundown on the weight pile. I have been at prisons that allow you to be at rec pretty much all day long, and I have seen prisoners who spend pretty much all day long on the weight pile. And I gotta assure you, these guys look like freaking mutants. They're like this damn big up top. Their waist is like this wide, and their legs are like this damn huge. At 6 in the morning would be the first count of the day. All prisoners would have to stand up in front of their bunks. The prison guards would come through, count each individual prisoner. That's how the count would go. And once that count was cleared, breakfast chow would commence pretty much immediately. Now, when it came to your breakfast chow, lunch chow, dinner chow, prisoners don't have to go to these. They're not mandatory that you go to them. And in fact, there were times when I wouldn't go to the chow hall for like days or even weeks at a time. I would literally live off of meals that I was making with my commissary items. But after breakfast chow was over, that's pretty much when the prison day would begin. This is when school would take place, prisoners going to work. This was when I would actually leave to go do my painting job. And this would take place about 8 o'clock in the morning. It was called prisoner movement. And prisoner movement would take place at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning. And this was the time when prisoners were actually able to move back and forth from wherever it was they were coming from, going either back to their housing unit, going to school, or going to work. From 8 o'clock till about 10:30, I would be out there doing my painting job. Wherever I was at on the prison compound, you can rest assured I would be somewhere painting a picture on a prison wall. But at 10:30 in the morning, that would be locked down for the 11 o'clock count. They would always lock down about a half an hour prior to the count time. At 11 a.m., count would commence. Prison guards would come in, do their counts, and this is what they would call a fully dressed count. You had to be completely dressed in your prison attire with your shirt tucked in and your little name badge right there on your pocket. And then once this count cleared, it was lunchtime. But the crazy thing about this prison in particular is that at lunchtime, they would actually open up the rec yard as well. So prisoners actually had to make a choice. You could either go to lunch or you could go to rec, but you couldn't do both. If you went to rec, you weren't going to eat. And if you didn't have any commissary, you were definitely going to be hungry. But I know plenty of prisoners who would choose to go to rec instead of going to chow and would actually sacrifice being hungry just so they could start getting their workout in for the day. And also, by the way, this wasn't one of those prisons where prisoners could be at rec from sunup till sundown. In fact, this prison offered rec 3 times a day, but these times that they would offer rec were sometimes kind of a pain in the ass. And this lunchtime rec period, this was only for like 30-45 minutes at the most. At 1 p.m., this would be prisoner movement again. In fact, anytime during these prisoner movement times, they would come over the intercom saying, "The yard is now open for prisoner movement. It is 1 p.m. The yard is now open for prisoner movement." And prisoner movement, by the way, it only lasts for 10 minutes. So if you are caught outside of your housing unit or of your school or of wherever you're supposed to be going, when they close the yard after that prisoner movement, you're definitely getting locked up and going to the hole. But it was during this 1 p.m. prisoner movement time that I would go back to my painting job, and I would work this job till about 3:30 in the afternoon. At 3:30, I would return back to the housing unit because at 4 p.m. this would be dinner chow time. And again, the rec yard would open during this time, and prisoners had that awesome option once again to either go to rec or go to chow. And I can assure you again, there were prisoners who would choose that rec time over going to that chow hall and again risk being hungry, because that is how important rec is when it comes to being locked up. In fact, rec is probably one of the most important things a prisoner can have as part of their prison routine. And at this 4 p.m. rec/chow time, I, in a lot of cases, would choose to go outside, go play basketball, go work out, over going to that chow hall to eat whatever nasty concoction they had put together for that dinner tray, whether it be some watered down beans, whether it be some mystery meat rock bullshit. Rec was way more important than anything that was going on in that chow hall. At 5:30 p.m., the rec yards would close. They would come over the intercom saying, The rec yards are now closed. The rec yards are now closed. All prisoners, please report back to your assigned housing units. We would all go back inside to be locked down till 6 p.m. when that 6 p.m. count would take place. And this was another standing count. And after that count cleared, and most importantly, depending on what season it was, it would be rec time again. In the wintertime, we would only get rec for about 30 minutes after 6 p.m. But in the summertime, rec could take place from about 6:30 till like 8:30 at night. The summertime rec was definitely the best. This is when all of the sports were taking place outside. I mean, guys in prison really have their best time on the rec yards during the summertime. You're out there sweating your ass off. I mean, literally to the point where guys are falling out on the rec yard. They're going that hard, whether it's working out or playing sports, softball, basketball, soccer, volleyball. Everything is jumping in the summertime. Once rec would shut down, this would be the time when guys would be basically locked in the housing units or the cell block for the rest of the night. This is the time when guys are starting to prepare their prison meals. They're cooking with their buddies. Everybody's grouped up in individual cells or at bunk areas. They're getting ready for the TV shows that are coming on for that night, getting ready to eat some food with their buddies, or maybe they're on the phone talking to whoever, reading a book, studying, drawing, doing their art, getting the tattoos in. The evening times in prison is really when everything is going on. And it would be during these evenings that I would be trying to finish up or catch up on whatever I had on that daily agenda of things I was trying to get done for the day. Maybe I would be on the phone talking to one of these crazy chicks who was dealing with me at the time. I could be tattooing or getting tattoos done. Again, the evening time is really when everything was going down inside of the prison. At 9 p.m. would be the final standing count of the day. This is actually one of the worst counts. You don't have to be fully dressed. You just have to be standing up as these prison guards are coming through doing their count. But it was during 9 o'clock count when they would always come through and count during the worst possible time. Whether it was on a day when there was this super awesome show that all of the prisoners were watching and they didn't want to miss a minute of this, but they had to turn their TVs off and stand at the front of their bunks for this count. Hell, this could happen during Monday Night Football or during any other big game, because every big game or every sport basically is super important to prison routine as well. But again, this 9 p.m. count, that was the last standing count for the day. And then after that was pretty much the end of the day. They would cut the lights out at 11 p.m. At this particular prison, we actually had to cut our TVs off at 11 p.m. as well. But by that point, Joe was already fast asleep. Because again, I would get up super early every single day, which meant that I was going to sleep relatively early as well. In fact, going to sleep early and waking up early was another big part of helping my time absolutely fly while I was locked up. I had a kick-ass routine while I was locked up, and that most certainly got me through all of the time that I had to spend in prison. And without that, I'm not sure how I would have gotten through that time, or if I even would have gotten through that time. And again, any kind of routine that you have in prison is going to have to completely revolve around the routine of whatever prison or facility you are at. Hey, look, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video learning all about Joe's prison routine. And if you did, please leave a like and a comment letting me know exactly what you thought about it. As always, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted, nor ever get locked up to have a prison routine. And make the most of every day. Peace!